Hello, hello. Welcome to our next episode of No Lits, No Limits. My name is Kin, and I'm joining this call from Canada. And today, I don't have Eric, my partner, on this call, but I have Angelia, a good friend of mine in marketing. So, Angelia, a little bit intro about yourself.
Thanks, Ken. Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for inviting me on your podcast. I'm loving what you're doing and the information that you're covering right now. So it's great to be a part of the discussion.
Angelia, thank you. I'm so glad to have you on this podcast with me. You and I worked together for quite some time. My gosh, it's a few years now, right? You have been someone with a real passion for marketing, particularly for manufacturers. Tell me, like, what drives your passion?
I've always had a fascination as to how things are built, and I've always leaned towards the high tech space. And so my marketing career started early in software and software development in Chicago. Back then, they were creating all these wonderful new things and starting to take advantage of the internet at a time when nobody really knew where we were headed. And I was fascinated. So I was working with a lot of software engineers at the time, and I learned a lot. And when I had moved away from Chicago and came to Vancouver, I founded my own company, Pivot Point Marketing. And when I started over 14 years ago, I had the good fortune of taking a deep dive with an electronics manufacturing client. And I found it fascinating. And working with that client actually opened the door to an entire manufacturing ecosystem in the lower mainland of Vancouver, which is really vibrant. And I'm not sure how many people realize how vibrant it is, but it's been a place where I've really enjoyed working. When I founded Pivot Point Marketing, I applied all the great knowledge that I'd learned in working with high tech companies to the manufacturing space. But what I also realized is that I couldn't do it alone. So about 7 years ago, I became a founding member of Salad Bar Group. And what we are is a marketing collective of skilled professionals from all around North America. And we're kind of a curated group that I've worked with over the years. And we provide those services to our clients. I do have two business partners I work with in particular. Bill Downey oversees creative direction, and Mark Huvenars is my other partner, and he oversees digital marketing strategies. So together we provide this great integrated viewpoint and source of information to drive our manufacturing clients forward.
And I have been a very fortunate client of you, of Salabar Group. And we've done some pretty fun things together in the past. I'm curious, Angelia, at this point, you've worked with quite a number of different manufacturers and helping them with their strategic marketing initiatives. What challenges are manufacturers facing today when it comes to marketing their products and services?
I think what we're seeing right now is yet another perfect storm. When we came out of COVID, there was obvious supply chain issues. And we thought, great, okay, we're coming out of COVID and we've resolved this. But now what we're looking at is potentially a new tariff climate, right? So certainly this perfect storm I'm seeing is managing supply chain problems and a retirement tsunami, because a lot of boomers now have decided to go into retirement. So manufacturers now are faced with losing tremendous amounts of mind share in their business and having to look to attract kind of the next generation of people that are going to come and work for them. And then when you combine that with ongoing and rising costs, which seems to be just a part of the fabric of this ecosystem, it really is a perfect storm. But I think one of the number one issues, though, has been the supply chain chaos. And as a result, working with the various manufacturers I've worked with, building stronger local ecosystems is really important.
In terms of the supply chain issues, I've certainly weathered that storm. I remember back just a few years after coming out of COVID, we ran into this golden screw problem that everyone talked about for many months. And recently, even some of the supply chain that might use memory devices right now is kind of going through a similar challenge because all the AI data centers are sucking up all the memory devices, creating a huge void in the supply chains. How would manufacturers, work with a team to respond to these issues in a strategic way?
What's important when you're going through times of immense change, which we are right now? I mean, the past 5 years have really been extraordinary. You need to have a clear and consistent voice in the market. So, from a marketing standpoint, what I'm saying is there's just, there's too much noise out there right now. And as you're aware, a lot of it's AI generated. So, the sort of content we're seeing, the digital online content, isn't always connecting with target audiences. It's tending to address problems similarly, and it's getting lost in kind of the sheer volume of information that's being shared online. So, what's key though, when looking at manufacturers in the B2B marketing space, okay, is that they're builders of products and relationships. And if you do it well, hopefully long term relationships, because most manufacturers want to onboard a customer for the long term. You don't want to do a one off project if you can avoid it. If you do it right, customers should keep coming back and doing more with you. So when you look at the manufacturing space, the buy cycle is a long one. And I've seen lots of quotes, and actually saw one on LinkedIn recently that said it's over 211 days typically in the buy cycle to bring on new business. So what that means to manufacturers is that you have to have a strong presence in your market. The unique value that you're providing in the market, above all else, needs to be very strong. Essentially, if you do branding well, what it's going to do is align your audience needs with the value that you're uniquely delivering.
Branding is one of those things that we've actually done a lot of work that we collaborated together. And it's certainly very, very important. In terms of the branding, what techniques would you employ to tie in aspect of empathy? Because when we are marketing, you have to really understand what the audience is thinking. And I know we talked a lot about empathy before. How do people connect in a way, meaningful way through those marketing messages?
I think you bring up something really important, Ken. What I've learned through my experience in working in marketing, but particularly with manufacturers, is when you make an emotional connection with your target audience, it really makes you memorable. And what we mean by that is you have a way of understanding the needs of that audience better than your competitors within whatever space that you're competing. And what essentially that does, that level of empathy builds trust. I mean, the truth is, when we're growing up, how are we initially taught to learn and understand things? People usually read books to small children, right? And when we're growing up, we do a lot of storytelling. Well, that works really well. And a lot of us are very hardwired to receiving stories. So when it comes to manufacturing, telling a story then that creates that aha moment or that connection of, wow, they really understand what I'm up against is very important. And it
Mhm.
becomes even more important because what I see in manufacturing is highly commoditized markets. If you're a manufacturer out there competing right now, chances are you're really good at what you do. And you've got a lot of competition that is also really good at what they do. And you want to then find compelling ways to tell your story and your value that's going to be different from that competition. And it can't lean into just the technology alone, because you wouldn't be in the market if you didn't have good technology. What's really going to set you apart then is the unique ways in which you potentially engage with your customers. It's the upfront conversations you have with your customers to perhaps validate design or to even make things better right up front. But certainly it's a process of engaging up front. So it's looking at a unique blend of technology and the business acumen that you bring to an equation that can potentially set you apart. And actually, every manufacturer does have their own unique way of problem solving. They just don't always see it. And that's where people like myself can come in and help them find a way to tell that story in a way that makes it compelling and makes that emotional connection.
Sometimes when we, as a manufacturer, will go out in a marketing message, there's just so much noise out there. And especially now with all this AI generated content, and people start to sort of wane in terms of their trust for the messages that they receive. Can you talk a little bit about, how would manufacturers leverage AI tools to actually play in their favor or perhaps defend against, competitors that might use AI to fake messages? I know what would be some of the words of wisdom that you can share with our audience?
Well, I think you got to go back to basics, okay? In my opinion, AI is technology that enhances what I do, but it's not replacing right now what I'm doing. What you find is if you can't come out with that authentic voice and everyone starts to sound the same, what you're going to end up in is a price war. Because then your prospect is only going to look at the price and make that a driving factor. And in manufacturing, we never want to be in price wars because it's just a quick dive to the bottom. Okay. And I've been hired actually by many manufacturers over the years to get them out of price wars. And I'll tell you how I do that.
Uh-huh.
What I've realized over the years is I've come up with a process called people to people marketing. And what we're doing is we're aligning real human needs inside an organization with the expertise and the outcomes that a manufacturer delivers. So that way you're having discussions with your target audience that are going to generate confidence, trust, and clarity. And it goes down to a few basics here. If you use my process of people marketing, there's a 5-step process that you can follow in order to find how to best articulate, how to be that beacon in for the best solutions in your business. But it's important to understand that decisions aren't made by companies. They're made by teams and teams of people. Manufacturing is a team sport. You can't build products and deliver services by yourself. We're dealing with a team of decision makers right now, and that team seems to be getting bigger and bigger. You know, it used to be maybe 2 people. What we're seeing now is 3 to 5 involved in making a decision because the complexity of what we're manufacturing is getting greater. So it involves more people and more touch points. So teams can consist of what? Engineers, procurement people, operations leaders, top level executives. It just depends on the size of the organization. Well, every one of those people has vastly different needs and values and concerns that you have to overcome, in order to build trust. If you really lean into people to people marketing properly and learn how to articulate your strengths properly, what you're essentially doing is removing the friction that you see in the buying process. So instead of using generic messaging that you might get out of AI that sounds cool, or instead you're honing in on the stakeholder that you're talking to and what you're saying. And hopefully, if you do it right, that person's going to say, wow, this person really understands what I care about, or I can really trust them. Or they really get the complexity of this project and they're asking the right questions up front.
Yeah, that's this was kind of the point about empathy that we had talked about before, to understand, the other team's pain points, but not just a team, but the particular team member. So the finance exec might be worried about keeping the project within budget. The operations leader might be worried about making sure the delivery is done on time. Whereas the procurement or supply chain person is really worried about making sure that they're getting the best, most competitive, lowest price possible for the value they're getting. So I always think about the better, faster, cheaper triangle that I talk about on this podcast. I think that's so important to put these teams of people through that lens. Not everyone's looking for the lowest price. Sometimes it's about looking for the quality. Sometimes it's looking up for the timeline. And so, as the manufacturer, whether we're machining parts, whether we're building circuit boards or doing injection molding, we face the same kind of challenges. So I really agree with this. In terms of this people to people marketing technique that you promote, can you share a little bit of success story about how some of this has helped some of your clients in any particular ways?
Well, yeah, I've got lots of great examples. I love showing off client work because I think right now a great example of some people to people marketing that you can see in action is a company called Pasmac, and they're a precision parts manufacturer located in Langley.
Mhm.
And if you go to their LinkedIn corporate page or go through their website, you're going to see right away they have a very strong brand. They've applied the process of people to people marketing to make an emotional connection. And their call to the audience that they're speaking to, and a lot of them are engineers who are very meticulous people, is to expect more. And to take the PASMAC challenge and what that means. And I collaborate with our creative director. He has a way of taking all of my great strategy and messaging and bringing it to life. Even in the shorts that we've done, we talk about key and specific issues in the market that when you do this effectively, people sit there and have that aha moment. And hopefully then over time, as people are wanting to build precision parts, the name PASMAC is going to come to mind because they're going to remember seeing this video or reading this article or seeing this cool part. And it really makes a difference because essentially what you're doing is you're shifting the conversation away from price or anything that somebody else can lay claim to. You're owning that story. And PASMAC have something that they call their business and technology toolbox. By blending these two together, they can provide their business expertise in a way that other precision parts companies simply can't because they've just got this wealth of experience. And it plays out in all the messaging that we place. And I think it's very important for manufacturers to understand is the work that marketing are doing with them is laying a framework for 2 years from now.
Angelia, in the past, you've alluded to this idea of leveraging strategies, techniques, especially with this AI wave of technologies that are hitting our website SEOs, affecting the way we use social media. I know you've talked to us about this idea of earned media. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I'm curious to learn.
Yeah, I'd really love to. A strong SEO strategy is a strong AI strategy, by the way. I mean, all the great tools and techniques that you've used for SEO, which really leans into good, high quality content. Okay. Great content has not gone away. And I'm talking about content where you've done your homework, you understand the people you're talking to, you understand the challenges they're facing, and you're creating content that resonates with them. And of course, AI keeps changing. Right now, AI is going out and searching for trusted content. Okay. So more than ever, increasing your brand's visibility and reputation is critical if you want to be seen. But what we mean by earned media is being seen in the press. So you're being quoted in your industry publications and newspapers and magazines or online presence and websites. Earned media right now is driving AI searches. And it's because of the notion of third-party validation. And it's influencing what AI finds. And essentially what earned media is becoming is kind of a training ground for AI because it deems these publications as trusted sources, which they are. You know, based on how writers have to write for these publications, things need to be researched, background checked before they're published for the most part. And in fact, at a recent Mid-Atlantic Marketing Marcom Summit that was held in Arlington, Virginia, they had a panel discussing this exact issue. And here's what they confirmed. They said, if earned media isn't in your marketing and communications mix, you're going to fall behind right now. And that's really interesting because getting by only on content creation and paid media and advertising isn't going to catch the attention of these very complex AI algorithms. And instead, they're leaning right now at this moment more towards what journalists and analysts and respected news organizations are providing. Earned media is building credibility and trust, and it always has. So if you find yourself featured in an industry publication, chances are people are going to say, oh, well, if this publication is recognizing them, they're credible.
Quoting trusted sources is definitely a good strategy. Early days of the internet, you might remember, this idea of inbound links to your website actually boosts your ranking in search because early search engines actually look at the number of inbound links as in other sites that link to your site. And if
That's
so
right.
many of those links drove people to your site, then your site gets higher in the ranking of those search engines. So yeah, it's kind of taking us back a few decades, I think, in terms of some of those SEO strategies.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And you know, it still is important to have links to your site and because that drives audience to you. And I mean, a lot of companies use their social media channels to do this. But yeah, there's just no doubt right now that earned media is worth pursuing. And it's just a way that paid advertising isn't going to catch. AI engines are not going to pick up paid advertising, but they are going to pick up a quote or an article or a review in a publication. And we're seeing provides very high impact exposure.
Speaking of driving people, let's touch on another aspect, which is a little bit more human resources related. We're seeing more and more young people having to joining our manufacturing operations.
Hmm.
I'm very pleased and blessed right now. We're working with some very, very capable young colleagues and very smart people. What can we do in marketing to drive and pull more people into manufacturing? Because I'm also doing some work with my alma mater to kind of re engineer the engineering school to be
Mm.
effective in training and promoting engineers to explore careers in manufacturing. Can you give us your insight about that?
Yeah, well, part of that perfect storm we were talking about earlier is this whole retirement tsunami and a huge need right now in manufacturing to attract talent.
Yes.
And it's challenging with the younger crowd that is very very attracted to different forms of working that may not align with working on a manufacturing floor. So how do you then introduce manufacturing jobs to the next generation in a way that makes them go, yeah, I want to learn more about this?
Or making manufacturing look sexy.
Well, maybe. Personally, I find it fascinating. If you tour me around a manufacturing facility, I'm just loaded with questions. I love seeing how the equipment works. I love to see how people work with it. I personally find it fascinating seeing the things that they bring to market. However, right now, how do we attract the younger generation? And I think what we're learning right now, and it changes, is that you and I we look at a website and we go to LinkedIn and the corporate page, and that's how we tend to start our journey in assessing a company. But we're not finding that at all with younger generations, actually. They tend to check a manufacturer's social media channels first. And so it's really important that if you do have to do some hiring and you want to attract kind of candidates to bring them in and at least create interest, that you have strong content on those channels that resonates with them. And showing an intern or showing a new hire going to work and seeing what it's like, fantastic. Okay, really sticky. And also the fact that it's a video makes it even more attractive and interesting for the younger folks looking to assess companies. They really want to see that a company aligns with their values too. And so showing your company doing the things that are important, things like, well, you mentioned, Ken, working with local universities or schools. How is your company involved with them? A couple of my clients that I work with now do outreach, not just to universities, but to high schools. So in grade 11, to introduce what it's like to actually work on a manufacturing floor and then to take these students on tours of the floor. It's really, you know, eye-opening for them. And frankly, I've had some interesting conversations with engineers I've worked with over the years, incredibly well trained. I mean, great graduates of great universities who've never set foot on a manufacturing floor. So even though they're really great technically at designing these things, they haven't actually seen how it all starts and moves on a floor. And I think this is an opportunity for manufacturers to reach out maybe even early to get the word out about the opportunities they're providing.
Recently, in my current role, I've had the opportunity and the benefit of showing some UBC engineering students around our facility, and they were just in awe of seeing products being built on the automation line, being able to see it in real person, as you've experienced many times visiting the manufacturers that you work with. It is very fascinating. And a lot of people don't realize how much fun and challenging at the same time working in a manufacturing operations really is. I kind of find it funny because my daughter's friends, very smart young people working at a coffee shop, and they really enjoy it. Of course, there's a lot of social interactions. The
Hmm.
environment's really cool and fun. I get that. But, I see there's a lot of similarities working in coffee shops as it is working in manufacturing. And I use that a lot in my analysis of processes and optimization of how people need to work, and even Lean Six Sigma ideas that
Hmm.
applies in a coffee shop equally like manufacturing. It's just different machines, different things that we're making as an output. Instead of making a cup of tall latte, we're actually making some circuit boards or machine parts. There's a lot of similarities there. So I find that being able to show that is very important. And I know we've worked on some very cool video content, short clips, even just artistic contents that Bill had contributed to really kind of showcase the fun part, the enjoyable part of manufacturing, which is fantastic.
Well, yeah, and it goes back again to manufacturing being that team sport, right? And how each person really is very important and makes a huge difference in building quality products, right? And whether it's upfront design for manufacturability or it's the technology and processes you deploy, if you're ISO certified, the levels of quality standards you adhere, yeah, it relies on people. And I think it's really important right now that when you look at your marketing mix, that you keep your social channels full of things that will attract that next generation and frankly also appeal to new customers, right? They want to see what you're doing to stay relevant. And, I have seen in some cases manufacturing websites that are pretty stale and stagnant. You put it up and it's like, wow, that was a lot of work. And I'm sure it's 10 years old, but it does what it needs to do. Well, but does it really? And I think that if you want to attract a younger generation of worker that's going to be with your company for some time and keep them, that keeping your social media channels fresh and full of interesting content. And particularly, I think showing machines in action is really fun. If that's a part of what you do, is really great. I saw one client just after Christmas took their company curling for an evening. I mean, this is fun stuff. The more that you can show that, it elevates you above others. And it's a great conversation to have. So hopefully that's given some people some ideas. But again, social media becomes their first point of interaction, not your website. So keep that in mind.
Exactly. The showcasing the people connection. Angelia, it's been such a fun conversation. We're coming up towards the end of our episode. If people want to connect with you to learn more about what you do with marketing strategies for manufacturers, where can people find you?
Well, I am very active on LinkedIn. I would love people to connect with me. I love to keep the conversation going. And I'm
Okay.
definitely somebody who asks a lot of questions and loves to learn. So by all means, connect with me. And then you can go to my website, pivotpointmarketing.com,
All right.
and you'll find the steps for people to people marketing. So if you want to get a feel for the process and how it works, or you want to give it a try yourself, it's all laid out there on my website as well. And I encourage people to take a look. And also, if you want to feel inspired, I have a lot of case studies too of client work, of which there's a couple there, Ken, that you and I've worked on, that people can take a look at and hopefully it'll inspire them to see what can be done.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll be sure to include the links to your LinkedIn and your website as part of the show notes here. So if our audience have any questions, feel free to drop us a comment. I'll make sure we pass it on to Angelia. And Angelia, thank you so much for being a guest on here and sharing your ideas and great insights about marketing when it comes to manufacturers. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Ken. It's really been a delight being here.
All right. Hey, thanks, everyone. Until the next episode, thank you, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.